Hi, everyone, and welcome back to week 3. We're chatting through selections of Bardskull, and I am joined by two legendary mentors from the Legend Fiction community. We have Mary Kreger and Gabi Battel. Welcome, ladies. Good to have you with us.
Good to be here.
Yeah, thanks for inviting us.
So we're gonna have fun, just like we did last week. We've got a couple of selections from mostly part 1, and then maybe some part 2. Things that are interesting or worth walking around and talking about. And we have. I only briefly read through these this morning. Like I said, I've read through the book once before. Now we're going through it again because I think it offers us as fiction writers uh, fascinating and profound things to think about, and what our craft means, what it's accomplishing. What is trying to be accomplished in us as well. So if you haven't yet seen the first episode, link is in the description. You can follow along the playlist, and we're just going to keep right on going. And if you don't have a copy of this book, be ready for an incredible, intense, and wild ride. Link is in the description as well. Buy your own copy. Support Martin Shaw, who is a personal hero of mine. Okay, so let's just get right in. I'm going to start with a selection. This is, on Kindle, it's from page 92. I don't know what that means in print, but okay. So here's what he's saying. I'm making my way to a hill fort. It's an Iron Age hill fort, a ridged, moated, rough circle that people lived, died, loved, and conjured in. It's prone to mood swings. I've slept there many times. The place sometimes thick, terrifyingly thick with magic, and then other times sour-aired and flat. It will not display itself for whatever wish I may bring to it. And that means I trust it. It has never tried to paralyze or enchant me as some places have. I've never needed professional help to wiggle back out of its humors. Some places you do. They clamp shut on you. They tendril you into incapacity. They mineralize you, mossify you. And despite the tantalization of our animistic selves, most of us don't want that. Not really, nor anything like that. We want the t-shirt. We don't want the encounter. So we'll pause there just for a second. Here's what I liked about that thought. He's going into a place. He's sitting in it for 101 days. I think I've got this actually as a selection that we'll read, but he's sitting in a place for 3 months, I think, which is 101 days. And he's letting it try to talk to him. I like this line where he says, sometimes it's like really thick with magic and inspiration. Other times it's like nothing. And I can't control that. And it doesn't force itself on me. And it made me think about Narnia. Like, remember when they opened the door and it's not there this time. Nope. It's like you can't control when it shows up. Like there's something on the other side that controls that. Where was the other thing was? Oh, and then the sensory is like, if it will not like song and dance for whenever I am ready, whenever I want it. And so he says, and because of that, that means I trust it. Because if it did dance and gamble and show up and grant me inspiration and give me the magic and answer my desires, there would be something else going on. But the fact that it's like another person, like in a marriage relationship or a date, I can't get what I want from you or this other person all the time, which means I'm dealing with something real, with a real person. I have to learn to change, to accommodate what it is I'm encountering. So, Mary, any thoughts come to your mind? I thought that was interesting.
I love what you said about it. Yeah. And I understand why he does trust it, because then he knows it's not from his imagination. That sometimes it feels magical and sometimes it doesn't. So, yeah, it really is like what you said, encounter with a person. And then I also was just interested in it because when I went to Wales back in college, we went to an Iron Age hill fort.
Oh,
So
wow, really?
kind of a magical kind of experience.
Mm-hmm. I mean,
Yeah,
it's
I
like
mean,
writing novels too, isn't it? Sometimes it's like magical, and then other times it's like, if it was magic all the time, like that would be exhausting. It's already exhausting as it is.
yes, look, it's not magical all the time, so
Excuse
I
me.
guess good for our humility.
What do you think, Gabby?
Honestly, I think it's kind of freeing because, that thing you described about sometimes it's magical and then sometimes it just screeches to a stop and it's all flat. That actually happened to me within the past 2 days. Like, I think it was yesterday. Yes, it was yesterday. I hammered out 20 pages of a novel, and it was just coming, it was flowing, it was awesome, and I was like, "Okay, I am ready to get into that today," and then I sat down at my desk, and I was like, "Me no know how to write." It was just
Yeah.
gone. I had nothing, and it's kinda freeing because, it's so easy to think, did I burn myself out yesterday? Do I need to, like, portion it out better? Did I need to, do something better this morning to get a better
Hmm.
start, to kickstart it?
Yeah.
Whereas, his statement here is that sometimes it's there, sometimes it's not, and that's okay. That's a good thing because, our
Hmm.
brains weren't meant to do one thing constantly all the time. So,
Hmm.
yesterday God was like, write 20 pages, girl. And I wrote 20 pages. Today he was like, talk to your friend, film a YouTube video, read a little bit. So there's like
Hmm.
this freedom in the
Hmm.
fact that, yeah, not every writing day or week or whatever is going to be amazing. It's not gonna be
Yeah.
that, what did he call it? Deep magic? Deep dark,
Hmm.
it's not always gonna be that, and that's alright, that's part of the process.
Hmm.
Then there's the other days where you can rest, you can relax, your brain can kind of fill up, recharge, and so, yeah, that's actually what I was thinking of as you were reading. I was like, "Yeah, this happened to me yesterday and today."
Hmm.
Um, well, what Gabrielle was talking, it made me think of like the idea of having a muse, like that the creative ideas are not really coming from you, like they're coming from an outside source, something outside
Yeah.
of you,
Hmm.
which definitely I think fits with the theme of Bardskull.
Right.
Very much so.
There's also the thought, or I think this advice is really, really helpful, which is repetition is better than strength, right? And I think a lot of us think, well, I can put off writing because, I know that I can bang out 20 pages on a good day. And so I'll just take off the rest of the week and then just, I'm not saying that's what you're doing. I'm saying it's probably something I would do. But so that would be like, I can like muscle through a ton of push-ups on one day, pull-ups the other way, on one day, but then like not need to exercise for the rest of the days. Whereas if you follow more the cycle, you follow more the repetitions of like, okay, if I just do 5 every day, or if I write 100 words or 500 words or 1500 words, if I keep up that pace every day, I will make a lot more progress and learn a lot more. I will work with the pace of my actual skills and the way that my body, my presence can actually handle stuff, as opposed to trying to like bust it out and, you know, um, anyhow. So repetition is better than strength. I like that advice.
And I like what you mentioned about how, embracing what your capabilities are at the moment because, I tend I tend to be the person with the bad habit of taking a typing test before I start writing and be like, "Oh, I can do 75 words a minute. That means I should just fly through this excerpt." And it's like,
Yeah.
"No, Gabriella, it's the way that you write. It's a whole lot slower, first of all. It's a whole lot more introspective. There's a lot of
Hmm.
thought and playing and tinkering going on with it." And to just be okay with that because like if I tried to run a marathon right now, which my body cannot do, I would be miserable. I'd be throwing up. I'd be exhausted. I'd be like, I hate this. And that's okay because I have not trained for a marathon. And,
Hmm.
if I run some more and train and practice, then I will be able to go longer. And maybe that will happen with my writing too. I get more in the groove. I come up with a habit, and the habit becomes more of an integral part of me and my writing process. Then, sure, maybe I will write a little faster, a little longer. But it's okay to just know, no,
Yeah.
that's not where you're at for me. That's not where I'm at
Hmm.
right now.
All right. All right. Well, let's keep going. I had a little. This is actually a personal highlight, not just a selection, but I thought it was such a cool little one. Here's where he says, "When spirits come in the forest, something happens first. It gets quiet. You get about 10 minutes of acute padded stillness. It's not like any other kind of stillness, any other kind of quiet, or any other kind of atmosphere. This is your moment to run, if you still have the legs underneath you. Otherwise, the assumption is you're in." I just thought, oh, sometimes that's what it's like when you got an idea for a story. Suddenly things feel thick and very intense around you. And sometimes when it comes into moments of like active spiritual contemplation, like prayer. There's those moments of like very intense attention or quiet, and sometimes you actually, if you're paying attention or you've cultivated attention to this, you can notice it. Other times it just happens and it sort of passes you by. I think authors might be one kind of like vocation that's trying to pay a little more attention to this when spirit draws near, when the muse draws near. Any short thoughts on that one?
Oh yeah, for sure. Because like that quiet moment, a lot of times. Now, of course, the quiet is internal. It's your mind quieting down, but it doesn't hurt when like the world around you is also not making noise at you. Um,
Mm-hmm.
so I'm just thinking of the times where I have, at night when I'm kind of trying to fall asleep, and I'm also not like actively necessarily pursuing a plot line or whatever. I'm just kind of like mulling it. I'm just
Mm.
kinda, like, tromping around
Noodling
in it, like,
around.
in the
Yeah.
mud, and then all of a sudden, it all just starts clicking together, and I am serious, I have outlined quadrilogies in my it doesn't happen often, but I have outlined, like, the basic structure of quadrilogies in my head in those moments. It's like that powerful thing that you were talking about where it's like, you're all in. It gets
Mm-hmm.
quiet, this powerful thing starts coming, and you're in.
Mm-hmm. I imagine for people who are not writers and they're listening to this and they're like, "You guys okay? Like, do you need to blink if you need help?"
No, we are not okay, but it's the most amazing
Yeah,
thing ever.
exactly. Yeah, we're insane intentionally. What do you think, Mary? Any thoughts there?
So you got to keep the post-it notes out. when you had that inspiration, I know when it happens, then I just have to go and find a pen and write down whatever it was at that exact time, or it's gone.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So, or now I use my phone sometimes. I turn on notes.
Mm-hmm.
Sorry about the background noise.
Yeah, I love voice note and transcribing like constantly. Yeah.
Yeah, sometimes, and then I look at it later. I'm like, wow, I don't even remember. I don't remember thinking this or anything, but I must have because it's right there in my notes. So yeah. So like you got to be all in, and because you really can miss those inspirations if you wait and just let time keep going.
Yeah, yeah. All right. Here's another little selection. I like this one because it's a little bit of an insight. It's an overview of Martin, into Martin himself and his childhood and why things matter to him. And we'll see where this one goes with you, ladies. So, the woods that are my holy hills of South Dakota, my Mount Kailash, or my Glastonbury Tor, my Kader Idris, my Uluru. Every time I climb the beach, I'm scaling the world tree, valiantly clenching the broad trunk between my unstrong kitty thighs, shifting up onto a branch so that I can gaze up at Odin, the All-Father, and his great ravens, Hugin and Munin, thought and memory. They swoop round the high branches, telling me things that are to come and making me cry. Below is Tumnus, with a lantern, telling me to hurry, 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 the White Queen is coming, so I climb down and go to school. At lunch, I will sit and not want the liver, or the kidney, especially not the rice pudding with the synthetic jam plopped in the middle. God, no. At the lunch table, I close my eyes and I think of Sherwood Forest and what much the miller's son would be eating, and dear Marion and Friar Tuck, valiant Will Scarlet, Allen a Dale, and Little John and Robin himself. I know, as I keep my eyes clamped shut at table and hug myself, that Robin is the twin brother of Arthur, his green ally, the leafy sovereign and shared custodian of this island. Does anyone else know this? I know it's not rice pudding they're eating out there in the dusky forest. So, I love the characters, the list of things that he thinks about as a kid. Most importantly, it's he's, how do I say, he's rooted, trying to be this bard, rooted in the inspiration of his area. The people and the figures that matter to him, they're very, very real to him as a kid. What do you think? What goes through your minds?
Yeah, there's something really beautiful about his like fidelity to that area. Like that he uses examples from there. Like Kader Idris is like it's like a mountaintop in Wales, so somewhere pretty close to where he is. And then I think he talks about Glastonbury Tor. That's like the legendary Isle of Avalon. Is supposed to maybe be there. It's not an island anymore. It's more like a swamp. trope, I think, around it. But
Okay.
yeah, he's using like references from things that are like stories right from where he is, which makes sense because that's what he's went out there to do. But that's what did you think about him saying that Robin and Arthur are brothers, especially the
I
green
love
part?
that. Yeah. I That's a conversation that I think would be really fun to get into. He talks a lot about Robin Hood, I think, on his Substack, and so I paid the $7 for 1 month to go in and read some of that, and it was really quite something. Because they're both accomplishing the same sorts of things, but they're doing it in two different places. You have Arthur within, you could say, the granite courtyards of Camelot, right, with its high culture and high civilization. It's a very intentional human space, full of a lot of human abstraction. Maybe you could say that. And then Robin actually, it's like when that world goes sour and the king is gone and the bad people are in play, well, Robin heads back out into the greenwoods. And there it's like culture starts again. You can sort of go back to basics, go back to the beginnings of faith, food, festivities, friendship, safe making. It's like starting a new, Camelot again. And this is not to say, well, if culture sucks, go back and eat berries and live in the woods. It's Robin he's a mythical sort of reimagining of what Arthur was trying to accomplish, but he's doing it with a more intentional, shall you say, connection or union with the natural world. Mary, you look pretty intensely like you're thinking of something.
That's awesome. I love what you said.
Oh, thank you. Gabby, what's going through your mind?
I was thinking, and then tell me if I'm way off base here, like if I misunderstood something, but it sounds to me a little bit like he is using all these stories that he loves to kind of add some zing to where he's at, because he obviously does not have the highest regard for the rice pudding. Like these
Yeah.
mundane school things. Like to he had to climb down from looking up at Odin to go to school where they eat gross rice pudding, I guess.
Mhm.
And uh and just the way that, because I know I do this, like when I'm just bored to tears and then I just kind of drift off and start thinking about my stories
Mhm.
and how these little dots and pieces of the magic that we either read or we come up with, they really just add this
Mhm.
extra spark
Mhm.
to day-to-day life.
Mhm.
And maybe they add that extra spark because they are they're kind of like a removing the veil of our day-to-day life. So like
I think
day-to-day
that's
life,
exactly it.
if you're kind of like just slogging through it
Mhm.
glaze-eyed, then it's pretty boring.
Mhm.
But the story is like, hey, no, this is all pretty interesting. This is you
Mhm.
alive,
Mhm.
you know?
Mhm. What do you think, Mary?
Removing the veil, that's really good. Yeah, I love he used the rice pudding example. I feel like I really was Martin Shaw when I was a kid. I was just be daydreaming about stories at school and always making them up in my mind and thinking of the books I was reading. Like in high school, during world history class, I had like a book tucked into my world history book.
Your
A
stand behind
novel.
you is moving. Just to let you know, your stand is moving. It might fall over.
Yes, I'm holding on to
Oh,
it. Sorry.
okay. I think the sense that he's using is, I think you're right in that it's a bit like, what is it? Gradgrind from Dickens, or these horrible, unimaginative characters who are, all they want to do is squash out and crush out the imagination and those what do you call it? Those characteristics, in children, and make them to be practical, level-minded, good boys and girls and so on. And
Like all
he's
the
like,
hateful people in Roald Dahl stories, like the
all
adults
of
are
them.
like this
Exactly. Yeah.
principal who's just like,
Yeah.
no
And it's like
fun.
to be that kind of a boy who wants to climb trees and talk with the gods and engage with the world and Mr. Tumnus and stuff. And to have grown-ups, sort of come and tell you that none of that matters and you are an unruly, hyper imaginative sort of thing. Whereas now he's a grown-up as an adult and he's actively going out and re-seeking that connection that was kind of stamped out of him and stamped out of a lot of us. And now I think he's sort of asking himself or raising the line of thought, which is maybe there are some kids who are really highly attuned to this stuff. What do we do to them when we don't know how to handle this stuff, and we sort of stamp it out or ignore it and don't know how to cultivate it? I'm not saying I have the answer, but it's not always the adults who are attuned to things like the fairies. I'm fascinated by this one line from Mark Twain's book, which he just threw in there and just kept right on going, which is Joan of Arc used to speak with the fairies at the Great Fairy Oak. And she would go and ask the parish priest, like, are they going to be included? Are they part of the kingdom? Do they get to be saved too? And the priest didn't know how to answer. And then the story just continued. And I'm like, wait a second, she talked to who, what now? I don't remember that in the
Nobody
Ingrid Bergman.
says these things. Nobody tells us this.
Yeah, but that she had a very immediate and active and, practical, level-headed engagement with the angelic and spiritual world around her. Fairies are part of that. And it's a whole other question that's going to tick people off. And it's like, well, we should just keep on going. But Shaw is very deep in this kind of world too. So, okay, let's keep going here. So this one it's a little bit longer. It's talking about the first theme about him hunting the wolf and the wolf hunting him. So, okay. All right. So he's talking about, sort of the same kind of thing. There's the grad grind problem of our mind today versus the idea of an older, more ancient, more magic-bound world, that sort of thing. So he says, the old stories say this is not a horse time, but a wolf time. This right now, when he's writing this, he is pursuing a mythical figure of a horse. It has certain things to teach him. But as he's doing it, he's now beginning to realize, my name is Shaw. That means wolf. Maybe I'm actually being hunted by a wolf here, by a myth or a spirit or impulse or influence of a wolf, something like that. So he says, for the sore awfulness of this century, we need more fur, not less. That's the root of the trouble. It's a hairless mind. Hairless mind has us far distant from cormorant and eaglet, from birch bark and anaconda. Understand me, there's a great deal about people that I like. There's a vigorous gleam of the unique in a few. Danger lurks in the observation, but it's undeniable. But humanness seems truest and most vivid when smeared into the petri dish of the mad, bad, and beautiful expressions of a wider earth. To have a bald mind is to have black magicked yourself away from those wider nerve endings. A pox on the house that brewed that up. I'm starting to wonder if things actually were better in the old days. Let me set adrift my confession to you. 101 days the spirit of wolf can take you. The human that becomes a wolf when the moon fattens. Lupercal. If you can survive the 101 days, you may have the fur lifted clean from your bones and think pleasant thoughts again. Avoid all wildlife, stay indoors, wear white, utterly domesticate yourself, no lovemaking. I heard this once in a Widdicombe pub, and it stayed with me. This last little glimpse of oral folklore. For those who don't exactly know what he's saying, is like if you have the propensity to keep turning into a werewolf, and things are getting out of control routinely, then nerf yourself for like a 3-month period, and then you'll basically break all those habits and stuff, or break the magic that's turning into a werewolf. But this ceremony is all wrong now. This doesn't fit the dark buzzing of our times. To be more deeply human, we could do with more wolf, more animal, less animal, and we make terribly deranged decisions, and everyone pays. What will this look like? Every day, I will walk into a wood and sit under a hazel bush. I will carve out 101 days where I have my head turned in the direction that the feelingness of this ceremony dictates. On the outer layer of the encounter, it's not complex. On the interior, God only knows. A wolf has more information in 5 seconds about a forest, more acuity of focus than anything I will locate within this protracted encounter. I know that going in. Aping that is not what this is, though I admire it. This leans on what they call a poetic state of mind. And if you sneer at that, then forget it, read no further. So the remit is simple. Not praying away wolfness, but inviting it in. A reversal. I will sit under the hazel and sing my calling songs and see what comes. I'm not gambling for a crescendo or a climax or a coda. I'm just going to keep turning up. Such an idea gives me the jitters. So I have to do it. The deepest part of me will not likely fit into words. To have a wolf move through my mind, to be prowled. There's a lot in that. Any knee-jerk thoughts? Gabi, what do you think?
Yeah, so my knee-jerk thought is that I myself have that kind of draw, that kind of appeal to the idea of the forest and the wolf and that kind of a thing, because we're people, we're humans, and humans are soul and body. We are still a body, just like the wolves are a body, and I think that there's something to me, because I love werewolves. I love werewolves. I love shapeshifters. I love vampires when
Yeah.
they're not of the devil. It's just like another brand of human, or the fairies when they have a physical form. I love stuff like that. In fact, I even just wrote a story about a race of people where there are animals who have a human form, and then there are humans who have an animal form. And all that to say is that I really connect deeply with this idea of embracing the deep forest and the wolf, and kind of the grit and the growl and the teeth, because we're people, and we have teeth. We're human. We have an animal body, and I think it's not fair to us to only zero in on the kind of angelic soul bit, which of course is absolutely essential. But to just kind of use that to domesticate, I think you said, to tame, to tone down, to really put in a box, to put in a cage, this other part of ourselves that is in tune with this big, beautiful world that's got flowers and smells and trees and muscles and blood and stuff like that. I am obviously really in for really connecting to that piece of ourselves that we're so often told to tamp down because it doesn't look good on camera. But there is a God-given beauty in that physical, strong, kind of unbeatable survival body. God came and he had a body, and he bled, and he he brought that divinity and he put it in a human body. So that's something I really, really play with in my stories. And so that really connected with me. That reading did.
Yeah. Thank you. Mary, what do you think?
Well, that was great, Gabrielle. I like what you said about that. Just the incarnation at the end. I'm thinking again, like the other part about him trying to identify with the wolf part is just like we don't want to forget about the wild and the wilderness and nature, that we are at a time back in the old days. That's what people were so much more connected with nature. Like they lived more off of the land. Most people were like farmers. Like I think my ancestors were peasants, Polish peasants. They're probably all farmers, and they grew their crops, and they had to follow the cycles of the earth, and the seasons to make a living. And so we don't want to lose that. That's like in Michigan, people, to get that connection, they go up north and they go in the woods and go swim in the Great Lakes and go hiking and all those canoeing, all those things. We do that every year. And I think it's so important. Maybe that's us doing our wolf part.
That is great.
Yeah.
That's great. I loved the the thoughts. So a couple of thoughts. Like one is kind of funny, where he's like, we have this idea that the prim and prudent and proper way to be a noble, a good, a religious, a human person is to be totally baldified. It's like those hilarious reels where they're putting the well, maybe it's not hilarious. I haven't done it, but it's you put the wax down and then you rip off the chest hair and stuff, and so you're left with like, glossy baby skin or whatever. And okay, I'm not saying it's a bad thing, people, but that sense that is the ideal kind of human being, whereas your body is like, I worked hard to make that. I'm supposed to be, this is supposed to be part of the human experience. So for us to go and define an arbitrary, like you mentioned, the angelic side of us, which is true, to then associate specific qualities with the idea of being a rational, semi-angelic being. And he's like, there's a reason why wolves are here. There's a reason why we are influenced and inspired by what animals are, because we share in their nature. They share in ours at the same time. So I like that last line, for it to prowl through us and to reconnect me with the fuller experience of what it means to be a human being. And it's not always going to be nice and pretty. Can't always share it. Certainly can't walk down, the aisle on Sunday and talk to people about it. I just have to go figure this out and experience it for myself. And I like the one line where he goes here, I'm being challenged by this idea that everyone's going like, if you've got serious habit addictions, probably need to break, you need to spend 101 days away from that thing. And so he's like, okay, I need to break my addiction to modern culture and my idea of myself and what modern culture is. I need to break that addiction. I'm going to go out and sit in the forest for 101 days until I break it. And then he's like, that terrifies me. So I'm going to do it. And that just makes me think of like how we as authors get up to writing novels. Something lands in us and we're captivated by it. And we realize, crud, this is going to take 3 months of my life. It seems like a really good thing. I'm going to do it. And I'm not saying that when I go and show up every morning that I keep that in mind, like I am being prowled and something is working itself through me, and maybe I'm never going to share it and it's just going to be a crap novel. But it was the experience of that process that where I allowed myself to be led through something, because sometimes that's how inspiration works and it just flows and you're like, I didn't make this up. And then there's other times where it's just like one foot in front of the other on a dark and gloomy night, and like you throw out that chapter the next day. But it was the learned practice of that discipline of showing up, because there is a moment of intuition. There's like this beautiful line or a thought from Mount Tabor, right? When Christ revealed himself in his divinity for a brief, however long, to the three apostles. Alice von Hildebrand would say, one of the reasons why we truly fall in love with somebody is because we get a Tabor vision of them. For like a split second on a random day that you never control, all of a sudden you could see who that person was down to the depths of who they are as a human being. And all of a sudden you realize you love that and you're prepared to commit the rest of your life to that. And it's not something you can ever actually explain to anybody. And you can't even tell, why do you love me? It's it's because of the Tabor vision that I saw one day. It's like, what is this? Well, it's just something that you sort of, you just intuit, and it's beautiful and it captures you and you can't let it go. And sometimes I think we get that with a novel or a story. And I'm not saying that, when we do have like this insider intuition into a novel, that necessarily means it needs a nihil obstat and an imprimatur and it's going to be phenomenal. It's like, well, how I process this idea, this intuition, it's like, might take me 10 years to actually do it really well. But that doesn't really matter. It's like, when a parent gives a child a task and they know the child's not going to be perfect at it, but you give the task anyway. And it is in the following and the doing of the task. It's in the reps of the learning of the thing that they then grow into becoming something that can learn risk-taking, learn to be an entrepreneur, learn to go out into the dark and forge their own paths, So I liked that. Like he says, I'm not expecting anything massive and wonderful and it's going to be fireworks every day. I'm just going to keep turning up. And that just makes me think, yeah, every day, butt in seat, showing up, get back in the dragon saddle, wait for when it decides to fly, it will, but I am here and I'm promising to show that attention to this thing.
I think that in itself is pretty wolfish too, because if you think about a wolf, they're not super
Tracking their prey.
goal oriented. Yeah. So like the goal is to like get the prey, but even the prey itself it's not it's not that thing that they're doing that when it's complete everything will be good.
Mm-hmm.
It's just the day to day. It's the process. It's living. It's okay. I need to eat, so I am going to go track this prey, and then they chase it, and then they kill it, and then they eat it. and then it's the next thing. And so taking that approach where it's not like I have to finish said novel and then I'll feel good about myself. Just the process, tackling this chapter, chasing this character, doing that bit by bit, it makes the process much more less draining because it's not like, well, I will be complete when this is finished. It's like this is the completion. This process is the completion.
Yeah, that's very good. That makes me think of a line, I don't remember who it was, maybe St. Teresa of Avila, where she said, all the way to heaven is heaven. So don't skip out on the journey too. What do you think, Mary?
Yeah, when you were talking, I was thinking about it. Like, it's not so much like yes, we want to keep writing like the best that we can and writing good novels, good stories. But it's the most important part of it all is what we are becoming when we're writing all these things. We're supposed to be the masterpiece at the end, more than the sum of all the things that we create. So yeah, that's why that discipline and going in and writing over and over again is so important. Just continuing to move forward and write the day to day. And sometimes we'll be inspired, and sometimes we're not. But that whole process is changing us, and that's more important even than what we're producing.
I love that. I think that's a great segue into our last selection, which is it's a little story, which was short enough to actually include, because most of them are delightful and long, but this was kind of a short one. And I'm really interested to see what you ladies think with this one. So one of the, I think we might have mentioned this, and it might be either in the Bardskull series or in another conversation on the channel. I don't remember. So just to sort of recap, he uses the word witch in this witch in this story. And I think it's important to bear in mind that the use of the word witch is not univocal across all fairy tales. It uniformly means, I don't know, a weird, dark woman of evil doing or something. That's not the only. Sometimes it can be a wild woman or a weird woman or a wise woman, or all of the above. It can be somebody who meddles in dark powers. It can be a good witch like Glinda from, what is it? Wizard of Oz, right? So just bearing in mind that the word witch is not, what it does mean is somebody who has a direct, I wonder if I can word it this way, a direct contact to deep wisdom and reality that's not mediated like by anything. Yeah, kind of like the Desert Fathers or the Desert Mothers or a hermit or a mystic. I think that the old word witche, however you pronounce that, that's what that's pointing to. Somebody who is weird, who's on the edges, who's outside of the norm of how things are done. Okay, so let's just breeze through this story here. He says, it's a retelling of a beloved fairy tale. I am a young girl the other side of blue thorns, whose family forgot to invite the witch to my party, whose people got jitters at the thought of the witch. What else can happen without her, but that I prick my finger and fall asleep? Witch in exile, when that energy is abandoned, we all fall asleep. The servants, the hounds, the ale tasters, the singers in the gallery. I was 15 years old when I found the secret room in the ancient tower. All 15-year-old girls find the secret room in the ancient tower. They find that witch part of themselves. Within it was taboo. Within it was a spindle, the last one left which hadn't been destroyed. The 13th wise woman placed it there, and I wasn't really asleep. She replaced me with a changeling. Me, I had 100 good years' education with the woman of the winds before I slipped back into bed a moment before the prince arrived. Some mischief, you see. While they gaze at the thorny castle, it was a magical act to get everyone to look the other way. While they gaze at the thorny castle, I get my days on the high street. I, Briar Rose, am the witch now, and I will ride the wolf right into Trafalgar. I learn to walk on my hands and sleep hanging from a tree like a bat. And this time it's not the prince slips through thorn, it is wolf. Trouble your soul to wakefulness, all who read this. Become wolf, slip through the thorn wall and come find me. Kiss my lips, and it is you that will wake up. Gabi, what do you think?
Wow. I mean, you know, just that idea of he brought the wolf in again and paralleled it with that idea of really being alive. Not because the thorns and the sleeping, that was just kind of a way to get everybody out of the way, stop staring at me, stop, trying to pin me down so that I can learn what it really means to be really alive. Walk on your hands and sleep in the trees and then the part at the end where he was like, then you're going to be the one that wakes up. So the fact that there's just so much vivacious life inside you that then it's going to spill over to other people. Um yeah, that's the best interpretation I got. What do you think?
Oh,
Go ahead,
I just
Gabi.
love this reading, and I think I had talked to you about this part before, Dominic. I just love this part of the story, especially where it says that all 15-year-olds find that tower, that witch side of themselves. And I think, because I used to work with teens, like I volunteer for a youth group, there is something that happens to women, like to young girls about that age, about 14 or 15. Like there's like a change in like their personality. A lot of times they become kind of more shy and not so sure about themselves, a little more self-conscious, because it's like they stop acting like children, just being like, oh yay, and they start, I think they're like becoming more self-aware. And I think maybe that's partly what he's kind of referring to. It's like kind of a grief and a loss there, but it's also like beginning of an awakening, like of to something deeper. And yeah, so I love how he captures that. I don't know if I have any words, I can say it better than he does.
I know, he's brilliant, isn't he? The thought that came to my mind, so obviously I'm not a girl, so there's probably a space, I don't know what age it would have been for me, but so there's a movie that came out a couple of years back called, what was it? Nutcracker something Chronicle of the Seven Realms or the Four Realms or something. It was like a fantastical, gorgeous retelling of the whole Nutcracker thing, but
Yeah,
told as a
Nutcracker
story.
and the Four Realms.
Yeah, that's right.
Keira Knightley's in
And
it. Thinks she's the
no.
Sugar Plum Fairy.
Oh,
Oh, then
I
maybe I'm
don't even
thinking of
remember.
something else.
But I think
Okay.
it is. I think it is that movie though. And what I thought was so cool by the end of it, you have these two spaces. You have these external world of rubrics and ritual and liturgy, how the normal and appropriate way that we all get along with each other. Now, the problem is almost everybody in her life is sort of stuck in that world. And that's kind of where who you are as a person goes to die, because you turn into a machine that culture or society defines. Here's the appropriate way to be. Don't step outside the line. Whereas what she ends up doing is escaping into an interior world and discovering the value, bravery and excitement and adventure and interacting with other people. And so her interior life becomes very diversified and very rich and expansive. And then she learns how to come back as that free, and she's free on the inside now. And she's now able to come back and actually bring some freedom and some grace to her dad. It's been a year since I've seen this now. And she's then able to re-enter into the things that community offers. But now there's a point at which she's like, now I see the rules of the game and why they matter, and I can more freely enter into them, and I'm not just a slave to them. I loved that movie, that story, because it creates this sense of like, you can't have one or the other. If you're too much one, you become too not machine. What's the word? Well, you become like a robot. Okay. And it's like Pride and Prejudice is like a mess of this kind of, everybody's got to do things the right way. And, versus the needed freedom of your interior life and who you are as a person, what you think and where you can go and what you can get up to. If you stay completely in that imagined fantasy world, you slowly lose, detached. You just become detached from actual embodied, lived physical reality in communion with other humans who have their own interior worlds. And part of the magic of life is meeting other people, to meet them and have them introduce them, you to their interior worlds, stuff like that. So what I loved about that little story is how you go from being a child and just like being not flat, that's not the wrong word. It's like at one with the world. And then all of a sudden something happens and you discover a door and you enter it. And all of a sudden your world collapses and there's a new space that opens up inside you. And that's where you start to come into contact with direct reality. I love this definition of mysticism. It's direct contact with the divine. And if you were to take like one grade below that, you might have like a witch or a wizard character, direct contact with actual reality. And of course, I'm using reality in not air quotes, but in the massive, maximal definition of reality being this thing that is fully alive and enchanted and not just dead, which is how we define reality today. As Christians, like, that's not the world that we live in. So somebody who's fully interacting with that kind of world would be that kind of like he describes a witch character, a weird woman, somebody who's actually found that inner space of like complete freedom. And so, yes, you're distracting everybody with the outer wall of thorns. It's prickly, leave me alone. And I'm secretly slipping out and learning things and engaging in things. Like, it's just how I feel it's been for me. Learning things, investigating, testing things, creating my own worlds, learning how to do them. And nobody has any other idea what's going on because, until I'm ready to reveal that. But then because I'm trying to engage with life so deeply, it does also feel true. One, I kiss myself awake, this thing that I'm dreaming or that's trying to come to life, or I am being kissed awake by something because you start to feel alive. Or other people who then sit down with you and like really want to like let's get through the thorns. It's like, what's actually going on? And then in those friendships, when you really reveal to each other what's actually going on in those inner worlds, all of a sudden it's like the crackling electric sharing of life between you just wakes you up even more. And that's why real deep, friendship is such an incredibly powerful thing. Back over to you. Any final thoughts for today?
I'm good. I think that was a great lots of stuff for me to chew on, as we leave the video, and now I got to go watch that movie too.
That's a beautiful one. Mary, any final thoughts?
Yeah, that was wonderful. Yeah, just blowing my mind as usual, Dominic. But yeah, just love what you said about like there's like with one way you're just kind of living on the surface of life, kind of robotically looking at things, and then the other way, the interior life, you don't want to get too far in it because then you get detached from everything. So it's such a I think maybe that's kind of the struggle with life is trying to go back and forth and try and find the right balance so you're not all enclosed on yourself, but you're also not just going through the motions and not even really living and experiencing, understanding why you're doing the things that you do.
Yeah.
So.
I think that's great. What a great place to wrap. So I did have a final thought that was coming while you were talking, and I've now completely forgotten it. But it's that sense, bringing it home for our community, for people who are writers. There can be this temptation like, I've erected my prickly walls and now I am finally free and I can go and do whatever I want and act and sort of be however I want because I finally found that free space. And I think a lot of writers want to live there. We want to be there because it's exhausting having to deal with everything else. And this is a source of life and joy. But at the same time, like we've also talked in today's conversation, if we assume it's only us and our energy and our inspiration, and we're sort of concocting this and just doing this within ourselves, that may be happening. If it is, it's actually something to be a little wary of, because we don't live in a world where you are like a lighthouse in a wasteland and there's nothing else out there that's interacting with you. Part of our journey is to interact with and be influenced by not just each other, but our guardian angels, our guardian spirits, the beings of a place and of an area that sometimes don't have a voice in human community unless it's through somebody who speaks for them, which is why angels and patrons appear, to us like, here's something vitally important for the human community, or this is just for you. You need to understand and chew on this, And then you only have these posthumous memoirs of a saint going like, I'm never going to publish this when I'm alive. And then they die and then this stuff comes out and you're like, oh, this was going on in their life? Well, now we understand why they were so like dense and and present. There's so much going on there. So same things with authors. It can be a trap to, because I'm totally in this too, to only want to create and get up in your head and then not actually be engaged in real life, like in any way, with other people, doing the things that you can do that are good to do, and there's an infinity of them. So to detail them is a problem, but dealing with other people, and maybe the task, especially if you're like an introverted writer, like a lot of us are, is to find the right people, because it's not always practical to try to help everybody, but to find the right people where you can help, and learn from and engage with and so on. Major reason, good friends, which is why we have an online community, because it's not always fun or practical to go it alone. And as you've seen from today's wonderful conversation with our two mentor ladies, this is the kind of thinking that we feel is important, we like to bring to the table, and that we create space for. And we sort of recognize there may be a lot of possibly good things prowling through our authors in our community, and it emerges through the stories that really fascinate them, and sometimes they're pretty phenomenal stuff. And sometimes if you're feeling like, I don't know that I like what's prowling me, maybe I need help, maybe I need a little bit of sacraments, and I definitely need some friends. And so that's what Legend Fiction is for. So if you haven't yet, check the link in the description. Come and join us in Legend Fiction. It's totally free to get in and check it out, or it's $5 a month if you want to share your stories with us and get more access to both of these ladies who are editors and mentors, den mothers, I guess, in the community. Certainly they're inspirations to me and to a lot of our community members. Thanks again. We plan to be back next week. Grab a copy of Bardskull to support Martin Shaw, and keep writing. May the Lord be with you.
This is the way.
This is the way.